Good afternoon and good morning in some places in the United States. I'm Karin Stein. I'm talking to you from Iowa, Muscatine, Iowa. I'm an Iowa coordinator for Moms Clean Air Force and its Eco Madres program. I'm Colombian by nationality, but I have lived in Iowa and have been a resident here for over 40 years, and it is my honor to present today this press event on World Asthma Day. Hola, soy Karin Stein, coordinadora estatal en Iowa para Moms Clean Air Force y su programa Ecomadres. Soy colombiana de nacionalidad, pero he vivido en Iowa por más de 40 años y me siento honrada de ser la anfitriona de esta rueda de prensa en el Día Internacional del Asma. Before I continue, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the flooding that this community is facing, as well as other communities along the Mississippi River. This is a serious threat, and we hope for the best outcome for the communities along the Mississippi, and that includes Muscatine. About Moms Clean Air Force, we are a national organization of over 1.5 million moms and dads and grandparents and caretakers, and we are dedicated to protecting children and other vulnerable individuals from air pollution and the climate crisis. And our guiding principle is to fight for environmental justice. We believe in fighting for justice in every breath. And you'll see us everywhere in these red t-shirts or with a big red button on our clothing. You'll see us like this on CNN. You'll see us like this talking to a legislator. Just find us. Find the red t-shirts with the square logo. En Ecomadres y su programa, en Moms Clean Air Force y su programa Ecomadres, nos dedicamos a nivel nacional a proteger a los jóvenes e individuos vulnerables de la contaminación del aire y de la crisis climática, y luchamos por la justicia ambiental. En Estados Unidos, las comunidades latinas se ven desproporcionadamente afectadas por la contaminación del aire y las enfermedades respiratorias, y también los efectos de la crisis climática. Por lo tanto, es importante para mí que los hispanoparlantes que me estén escuchando sepan que estoy a la orden para cualquier consulta en español. Y si se contactan con ecomadres.org, siempre habrá alguien que los pueda poner en contacto con una de mis colegas que hable español también. In the interest of time, my remarks will be mostly in English, but I wanted to make sure that Spanish speakers feel comfortable reaching out to me in their native language, because after all, lung disease rates among Latinos and Latinas nationwide are disproportionately high, and 65% of Latino communities in this country are located in areas whose air quality falls below national standards. As mentioned, today we are commemorating World Asthma Day by talking about the pulmonary health of Iowans, particularly in this community, Muscatine, Iowa, and to talk about what needs to be done in order to improve the health of Iowans. This community, Muscatine, has had a long history of air pollution stemming from heavy industry and energy utilities running on coal and spewing out particulate matter in many forms. Over time, and thanks to the activism of affected individuals in this community, air quality in Muscatine has improved significantly since the horrid early 2000s through about 2017 and 18. And yet, adult asthma rates have risen in Muscatine since then, as well as COPD. Dr. Blount, what does COPD stand for?
So it's chronic obstructive pulmonary disease.
Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease.
Same thing, emphysema is another way.
Emphysema, okay. So those have risen despite improving air quality readings, and there are reasons for this. Pediatric asthma has decreased somewhat, but we need to keep working on assuring that industries protect local residents by adhering to the evolving standards of the EPA, which are based on medical research. And one thing that stands out in my mind is the prevalence of utility plants running on coal. And one of the largest in this area is operated by MidAmerican Energy, very close to where we are now. As a mother and as someone who was trained in the sciences, the prevalence of coal plants in this area and around the state of Iowa concerns me hugely for several reasons. First, Air pollution from coal-fired power plants is linked to a number of health dangers, including asthma, cancer, heart and lung ailments, neurological problems, dementia, and developmental and cognitive delays. Coal-fired power plants are on the decline in the United States because of cheaper and cleaner alternatives, including renewable energy sources. Yet as of 2022, 200 coal plants, many old, costly, and inefficient to operate, remain. And while a quarter of these, spanning 25 states, have plans to close by the end of 2029, MidAmerican has not yet revealed a plan to close its remaining coal plants by 2030, which is what we are asking for here today. As a consumer of energy and as a person from the tropics, I really do appreciate that our utility companies make it possible for me to heat my home in the winter. I am not being ungrateful, but as a consumer, I need to know that what I consume is brought about in the cleanest way possible, and coal does not fit that description. Second, what concerns me is that coal-fired power plants are an infamous source of toxic pollution. They spew mercury and 80 other dangerous pollutants, from arsenic to acid gases to the carbon dioxide that is warming our planet. Mercury, for one, is not safe for humans at any concentration, especially not for fetuses and small children. Mercury released from burning coal turns into methylmercury in the water, concentrates heavily in fatty tissue of fish. Then in the fatty tissue, it reaches the brains of fetuses when their mothers consume contaminated fish, and the brains of small children who eat the fish. Mercury is one of the most toxic poisons known to science. It can impact children's ability to walk, to talk, to read, to learn. And I want to emphasize again that no amount of mercury is safe for the developing brains. And we are on the Mississippi River. Many, many communities fish along the Mississippi and the Missouri on the west side of Iowa, from here to the Gulf Coast, from here to the Gulf of Mexico. And both rivers are impacted by the energy providers and industry still running on coal, including MidAmerican plants. Third, the climate impact of coal plants is huge because carbon, when burned, creates more carbon dioxide, a potent greenhouse gas, than other fossil fuels like oil and natural gas. Which is not to say that a good solution is to switch to natural gas for energy production, as some coal plants have done. Because even though particle pollution readings around plants that have converted to natural gas show improvement, there are numerous dangers associated with the extraction and burning of natural gas. We must get away from burning fossil fuels for the generation of electricity, and we must do so quickly. The last report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, from a few weeks ago makes this very, very clear. I'm going to talk from my personal experience. I'm 61 years old. This gives me some perspective in life. I was born and raised in South America, grew up in Central America, have lived in Iowa for a long time. I have family in Colombia, Costa Rica, Mexico, Chile, the United States, Spain, Germany, and India, and I can tell you personal family stories of how the climate crisis is playing out in all of those places. No transition is cheap or easy or free from negative consequences. I acknowledge this. But the climate crisis we have created gives us only one path forward, and that is to stop burning fossil fuels long before 2050. Fourth and last, Black, brown, low-income, and indigenous populations bear a disproportionate burden of environmental harms and adverse health impacts. An outsized number of people of color in the United States live within 30 miles of a coal-fired power plant. And that is true here in Muscatine as well as near the MidAmerican coal plants in western and northwestern Iowa. Being exposed to pollutants is the first phase of inequality around the country. The second phase is being burdened unequally. The same communities are being burdened unequally by the climate disasters spawned by the very carbon-based pollution that we ask you to stop. Dr. Blount, whom you will hear in a little bit, can no doubt address much better than I the effect of particulate matter on human lungs. But I can tell you, I know enough to say that a grade B, awarded to Muscatine in the last State of the Air report published by the American Lung Association, might be good enough for my lungs to function well over a reasonable period of time, but it's not good enough for people with asthma or the lingering effects of COVID, which was rampant in and around this community because many workers in the region, many of them people of color, were forced to work under unsafe conditions during the worst of the pandemic. I plead with our industrial and utility leaders, especially MidAmerican Energy, to be good neighbors to all, including people hundreds of miles downwind and downstream from us. When I look at water quality advisories in Iowa, I see mercury readings in streams that are high because they come in from coal plants in Minnesota. What happens here does not stay here. And before I introduce our next speakers, I'd like to invite those of you who are watching to visit us online at momscleanairforce.org or at ecomadres.org. Click on Take Action, click on Sign a Petition, and submit a petition to the EPA to strengthen the mercury and air toxic standards that will be reviewed next week, which aim to further improve the limits on what air pollutants, such as coal plants, are allowed to emit. And those of you who are here, I have QR codes that take you directly to that petition. And I also have a fact sheet published by Moms Clean Air Force that is entitled, "What is Wrong with Coal Plants?" Now I'd like to invite our next speakers in the order. Katie Rock from the Sierra Club. She is campaign representative of Beyond Coal in Iowa, and then we'll hear from Dr. Robert Blount with the Iowa University Hospital and Clinics, and then finally Alyson Glynn, one of the bravest women I know, whose personal story has played out right here in Muscatine. And we're available to answer questions after this press event, but I'll also be online. If you have questions, I can answer them online, and you can always reach us afterwards. I'd like to close with this thought. Statistics are not statistics. Statistics are people's lives. Let's never forget that. Katie.
Well, thank you, Karin. I'm Katie Rock with the Sierra Club Beyond Coal campaign covering in Iowa. I'm based in Des Moines, Iowa, our capital city for the state, but I actually grew up just outside Muscatine, so I'm pretty familiar with the public health issues that this community has faced, the legal recourse and justice that they have sought over decades, and the industry that's here. But first, Beyond Coal, if you've never heard of Beyond Coal, it is a national campaign within the Sierra Club that started in 2010 that advocates and pushes for legal issues to push for the retirement of the entire U.S. coal fleet by 2030. To date, Beyond Coal has prevented the build-out of over 150 coal plants in the United States and had a hand in retiring over 370 coal plants across the country. So we are here in Iowa. Iowa does have more coal-fired power than people realize. We are known for our clean energy, especially our wind, but that's only been built over the last 10, 15 years. Coal-fired power in Iowa has been in place since the 70s, and that's true here in Muscatine. So even though these coal plants are uneconomic, we know from recent activities we've been engaged in at the Iowa Utilities Board, from MidAmerican's own internal studies, that the Loiza coal plant is among the most uneconomic in its fleet. along with the George Neal plants outside Sioux City and the coal plant in Ottumwa. Clean energy is more cost competitive than coal-fired power, and yet we keep these coal plants online, and these communities pay the price. It truly is an injustice, especially for children, to have to carry the health effects of these coal plants for the rest of their lives. That's what we're here today to talk about, to really bring that to you and make sure that you understand how real this is. So even though these coal plants are in environmental compliance with the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act, they remain huge sources of pollution in their communities. So in Muscatine for quite some time has been known to have some of the worst air pollution in the state. It is the only area that in the last 5 years has been in non-attainment status for the Clean Air Act for sulfur dioxide. So that is a result of not only industry like the grain processing and Bayer's glyphosate plant, but also the coal-fired power plants that are run by Muscatine Power and Water, and just downriver from the industry in Muscatine County and Louisa County is the Louisa coal plant. So together with those major industries, those that aren't providing electricity, grain processing, and the Roundup plant, they have shifted to running on natural gas, which does emit less carbon dioxide. But the coal-fired power remains in our community. And we have a time right now, a unique opportunity with recent actions in Congress to shift away from coal power. So that's what the message I'm carrying for you today. Before we have Dr. Robert Blount come up, let's talk a little bit about what those sources of pollution from coal-fired power are. He's going to explain what kind of effect that has on a body, especially a young body. But it's not only sulfur dioxides, it's nitrogen oxides, it's particulate matter, it's carbon dioxide, and that's the air pollution. In the water, you have mercury, you also have mercury in the air, arsenic, and a whole range of toxic compounds. And these are for plants that are in compliance with EPA regulations. We can do better than that, and we need to course correct, especially for communities like Muscatine who have been carrying the effects of these plants in their bodies for generations. So with that, I'd like to invite Dr. Robert Blount. He's from the University of Iowa. He is a pulmonologist or a lung doctor. He sees patients, both kids and adults, in both intensive care settings and anyone who just has general lung problems. And along with seeing patients, he also does research. So thank you, and Dr. Robert Blount.
Thank you. Thanks, Katie. And Katie, thank you for that really inspiring talk. And Karin, thank you so much for inviting me.
My pleasure.
Thank you for all you do, because you're making my life easier as a lung doctor. Because I'm seeing patients once they get to the hospital from breathing bad air. And the cleaner you guys can make the air, the easier my job's gonna be. Thank you. I wanna talk a bit about World Asthma Day. I think this is really cool that we can have this day to remember the many, many patients that suffer from asthma. Right? And what is asthma? Let me just kind of go over that very briefly. So it's a disease. It's a chronic disease that affects the lower airway. So everyone take a deep breath and breathe it out. How easy is that? Really nice, huh? Deep breath in, deep breath out. So people with asthma, kids and adults with asthma, can't do that when they're having an asthma exacerbation. They can breathe the air in, okay, but the lower airways become really twitchy and they constrict and they swell such that it traps the air in the lungs. And so it's really hard to get that air out of the lungs. Patients described to me that it feels like it's drowning, like they're suffocating. It's really miserable, and it's a scary disease that can actually kill people. So nothing to mess around with. Why do people with asthma get twitchy airways? Well, they're sensitive to allergens in the air or air pollution. Anything that they're breathing in, or even things that they might be eating. What causes it? What causes asthma? Definitely a big cause of asthma is genetic. Okay, so if you happen to have asthma run in the family, it's something to think about, and you're having some difficulty breathing under certain circumstances. There are other causes, though, and air pollution is a proven cause of asthma. Okay, research has shown this, especially air pollution, large levels of air pollution that young children are exposed to. Then they can go on, unfortunately, to develop asthma, even with no family history. So air pollution actually causes asthma, and this is really unfortunate. Okay, on this World Asthma Day, I want to remember some of my patients, okay? And just, I'm thinking about them, and so I'm just going to share a couple of stories, if that's okay. My first patient I want to talk about is a young boy in San Francisco when I was working there. Are we good? He was, we've struggled with wildfires on the West Coast due to climate change. Everything's getting warmer, it's getting drier, and so the energy is there for wildfires. Okay, so we were in wildfire season. The air in San Francisco was not good, and the family came in, actually admitted to the pediatric intensive care unit with a severe, what we call status asthmaticus. Like he was really, really sick. And we did everything we could and fortunately turned him around. Now, I was talking with the family, and the family was so surprised. They're like, he's had mild asthma to moderate asthma, well controlled on his inhalers. We don't know what happened. And I talked with him. I said, with air pollution, with wildfire smoke, he's exposed to new air pollutants that he's never experienced with, and something that he breathed in caused this severe asthma attack. Now, the second case, unfortunately, I just have to say, she didn't do as well. Another case where she had mild to moderate asthma. She had smelled something that day in the air. She had no idea what it was. The parents don't either, because unfortunately, even though they did everything they were supposed to do and they started inhalers, and the dad rushed her to the local emergency room, she had a respiratory arrest and then a cardiac arrest, and she died. And I want to just, if mom and dad are listening to this, if they ever get this, I just want to say, my heart is with you on this World Asthma Day, and I'm going to do everything as a physician and as a researcher. I do everything I can do to help my patients out. Okay, and that starts with cleaning up the air. Now I have a couple of slides here. What are the known effects of air pollution? It really affects the lungs and the heart, the cardiovascular system predominantly. We talked about asthma, COPD. We mentioned COPD as well. Air pollution. COPD is predominantly caused by cigarette smoking, but it can also be caused by air pollution worldwide. That is a big cause of COPD. Lung cancer, pneumonia, cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, strokes. And in fact, there are almost 7 million premature deaths from air pollution each year. Next slide. So what's going on in Muscatine with health? Well, you might recognize this slide from the previous slide. Wow, of 42,000, almost 43,000 people, we have 3,500 cases of asthma. We have more than 2,000 cases of COPD/emphysema, and we even have 26 cases of lung cancer. Cardiovascular disease, almost 2,500 cases. These are all diseases in which air pollution can contribute to the development of the disease and making the disease worse. Folks, there are a lot of people here, right here in Muscatine, that are suffering from disease that's potentially preventable. And I know on my watch, I don't want to do anything to harm people. I want to try everything possible to help out my patients. And one thing we can certainly do is to think, gosh, how can we clean up the air pollution in the Muscatine area? Third slide. So this is data from the EPA. We have 4 stations that are running intermittently in the area, and I took that data, the daily average particulate matter. And Katie was talking about different pollutants that affect health. Fine particulate matter is this PM 2.5 is less than 2.5 microns. It can be inhaled deeply into the lungs, and those teeny tiny particles can then get absorbed into the body, into the blood system, right? Affecting every organ of the body. These dots, so on the x-axis here you have the year of 2022, every month of the year. On the y-axis you have the daily concentrations of fine particulate matter. It's one of these pollutants that is quite dangerous. And then each of these dots represents, there are 365 of them, one for each day of the year. And the red line is the line in which you go from the green zone of air quality to the yellow zone of possible effect on health. There were 31 days in the yellow zone, and it's scattered throughout. It's scattered throughout the year, and I'm not surprised because, I think there's no respite here. There's a continuous level of high pollution days throughout the year that is affecting health. Do I have time? A couple more minutes. So not all is gloom and doom. I want to tell you about one other patient of mine with severe COPD. He came to me, and he was admitted to the hospital. He was ready to die. He was breathing so hard. He was maxed out on oxygen. He had severe end-stage COPD emphysema. And guess what? He's a never smoker. Never touched a cigarette. Very healthy living all his life. And we talked and we said, what could be causing this? And the best we can ascertain that it was something he inhaled, some air pollution he inhaled, possibly through his work. So he got sicker and sicker, and he decided, I'm just gonna, this is it. I'm suffering too hard. I'm suffocating. I'm working so hard to breathe. Okay, so we moved him over to the palliative service, but then I talked with him and I talked with my colleagues to work him up for a lung transplant, and because in every other way he was quite healthy, and he got a lung transplant, and I met him recently at discharge, and we were hugging, and it was a wonderful feeling, We're doing everything from start to finish to try and help people. We're cleaning up the air, we're treating people, we just do what we can. And with that, I think I'm going to move on to Alyson Glynn. Alyson and I met several years ago, 3 years ago, because she had brought me her son, Grayson, with severe asthma. And these, you can see those bad air days. The bad air days sprinkled throughout. There's no respite. And Grayson was having recurrent asthma attacks from the bad air days in Muscatine. It kept coming up. We kept trying things. And I'm remembering you as a mom on this asthma day, the struggles you have to go through to take care of your child. And Alyson also has a a degree from University of Iowa in environmental science. And so, come on up.
So hi, I'm Alyson Glynn, and I'm actually native, born and raised in Muscatine. So a lot of familiar faces here. Good. So, Dr. Blount was talking about, my youngest son was kind of my motivator as to kind of my career path and also what I ended up doing later on in life, because early in life, my family, of course, we lived at the very edge of South End. And if you are familiar with Muscatine, South End area, especially way back when, was a very undesirable place to live due to a lot of the industry. Because Muscatine is a heavy, heavy industrial city. That's kind of what we were built on. We were built on, the button factory. We were built on industry, and we were built on just all kinds of industrial factories around town. And even when I became 18, my very first job was working in a factory. I worked in a steel plant for a couple years until I got pregnant with my first child. And my entire family has lived here pretty much from the beginning of time that I can trace back. And those members have always had problems, health problems. And I assume a lot of people can relate to that in Muscatine due to, unfortunately, there were a lot of air quality problems. We still have that to today, and we do have, water quality problems as well, not only due to factories, but also we're a heavy agricultural in the Midwest as well. So you combine all of these things as well as not being well regulated and not being well regulated, and it becomes a problem. So my family, since a few generations ago, we've always had problems, and it wasn't really apparent to me until I had my own son who had his own problems. And then you start connecting the dots. And then once you start connecting the dots, then you start doing your own research, and then you start going in and trying to fix things yourselves and becoming your own activist and trying to fight for, your children and your family. And so due to that, I discovered a lot. And all of a sudden, you find all of these problems in Muscatine and the surrounding communities and within the Midwest and all over the nation that you want to fix. But how do you fix it? So my son was born with problems with his lungs and problems with his brain, and he grew up. He's 8 now, and he's as healthy as can be. But like Dr. Blount was saying, we were having a lot of problems. There were many days that he wasn't breathing, and we would constantly be in the hospital. Pretty much every week we'd be in the hospital, and we'd be getting lung treatments, we'd be getting x-rays, we'd be getting all kinds of things, and nobody could figure out what was going on. There was really no rhyme or reason to it, and we couldn't figure it out. Why? We got referred to Dr. Blount, and he was actually the person that helped us connect the dots that, asthma sometimes, it's not explained, and sometimes it is. And when you start doing your own research and figuring out all the particulate matter that was in Muscatine, especially with all the research that was done here and all of the activism that was done, like say for instance with Clean Air Muscatine, and helping with the coal plants and helping with kind of bringing them, I don't want to say under control, but just helping to bring them to regulation standards, you start to realize that there are reasons. And even if it's not something that necessarily came from me genetically, it is something that it came from us environmentally, from where we live. And we actually discussed moving away from Muscatine, because Muscatine's air quality was so bad for him that our family discussed with his doctors about just moving away, going to somewhere else that had, better quality of air so that he could breathe easier. Unfortunately, like many families, especially in the South End area, who is exposed more than, people in the rest of our organization, it's not really possible to just uproot your lives and move away. It's not really possible to just go to somewhere that's better. You run into socioeconomical problems. You run into, but my family's here, my friends are here, my entire livelihood is here. I can't change my job. I can't just uproot our entire lives and move, even if it could make it so that my son could breathe. Sometimes you just can't. Fortunately, we did get his asthma under control, and he still struggles. He's still on daily medicines of steroids, and we still have visits to the ER, and we still have nebulizer treatments all the time, and his little dog that he knows how to operate because that's how often we do it. But I think one thing that people don't really realize is that people who are, unfortunately of lower economics, people who are of a minority status, we unfortunately sometimes run into problems where we can't move, where we can't go to better areas, where we can't get out of it. And so then we rely on other people to stand up for us. And fortunately, I have met quite a few people who are willing to be those activists. And fortunately, I was also given the opportunity to pursue my own passion of fixing these things. And because of my son, because of his struggles and me seeing these struggles and talking to the doctors and talking to the people who knew everything that was going on, I did go to school. I went back and I decided to study environmental science, and I decided to intern in many different places, studying water quality, studying air quality, doing my own studies, doing my own research, which then led me back to Muscatine and the different organizations that are here in Muscatine trying to better just Muscatine and the surrounding areas, living, learning, and implementing the things that we need done in order to raise the quality so that we get what we deserve. We deserve clean air. We deserve clean water. It's a basic human right to be able to breathe, to just be able to have a breath of clean air and not struggle and not worry about what am I passing on to my children if I do get pregnant, or what's going to happen to my child who has asthma that any second he's going to be in the hospital again. It's a basic human right. And I encourage people to reach out to your community. If you're not from Muscatine in particular, reach out to the people. Do some research, figure out kind of the organizations that are around you, figure out the people that do some of your legislation, and reach out. Because most of the time, they're pretty open to it. They're open to discussing it. You might not exactly see fast effects. That's not really how the world works anymore. But if you persevere, and if you really be the squeaky wheel, then you can get stuff done. And so I encourage people to get involved with the different organizations, and I encourage people to really just get out there and fight for yourself and fight for your children and fight for your community, because nobody else is going to do it for you if you don't say it yourself. And so it's my story.
Hello, me again, Katie Rock. Thank you, Alyson, for sharing your story and Grayson's story. I know I was really feeling it and really bringing it home of what this means on a day-to-day basis when you don't have clean air. Like you said, it's a human right to be able to breathe. And so as much as this is such a heavy topic, and Dr. Blount brought that home as well, sometimes these problems feel so big, and I often talk to Sierra Club members who feel like what can I do? They want to be activists, but it just feels like the actions you take just seem like a little tiny bite out of this huge apple. And what do? There's a great history of activism in the Muscatine area. Some of the leaders are here in this room. I know you can't see them through our video stream, but thank you for coming. So people have united and spoken with one voice, as Alyson said, to talk to their elected leaders, to talk to leaders in their community who sit on key boards and are making decisions that impact the entire community, to push for cleaner air and cleaner water, and ask our industries that shape our towns to correct some of these injustices in public health, and that fight continues. So also around the room we have some diagrams that drive home where all these different sources of pollution are coming from in the area. Dr. Blount focused just one slide on particulate matter, but as Karin mentioned, there are dozens, hundreds, I don't know, of different pollutants that come from all of this industry. So we are lucky that here in the area we have the legacy of Clean Air Muscatine. We also have a new group that's forming, the Muscatine County Energy District, that's focusing on building out something new, building out something that's clean and enduring and brings or keeps local dollars local for your energy bills and the things that you need to run your home and your business. So those are two groups that you can get involved with, or I think just one. I think CLAM no longer exists, right? Okay, they're nodding. Thank you. So Muscatine County Energy District is your place. The Muscatine Power and Water Board is still weighing how to transition from coal. They have not yet decided but they're planning to retire their coal plant by 2028 completely. Part of it's coming offline this year. And they have not yet decided officially how they're going to replace that coal power. Will they go with gas? Will they go with solar and batteries? So there is still time to engage your Muscatine Power and Water Board or staff, if you know people who work there, and let them know how important this is to you. There's also your elected leaders at the state level. At the county level, you can push for good wind and solar policy. Muscatine, I believe, actually has pretty good solar policy. Wind, I don't know. I don't think this is an ideal place for wind, but I also have heard that people are, after the Inflation Reduction Act, looking to install clean energy all over the place. But Southeast Iowa is kind of known as an area that is open for business, for solar, and you can be part of making sure that that door stays open. That's very important. And at the state level, we have, of course, our statewide elections and federal elections. Your legislative elections are very important. But also, we spend a lot of time with our campaign at the Iowa Utilities Board. It's kind of an important board that oversees the regulation of our utilities that a lot of people don't pay close attention to, but that's something that our campaign's focused on. And if you're interested in getting involved with us and calling for a clean energy transition for Iowa that's not dependent on coal or any fossil fuels, you can go to sierraclub.org/Iowa and sign up to be on our email list. And now I will hand it off to Karin. Thank you.
So to conclude, thank you very much for those of you who are in the room. Thank you for those of you who have been posting questions online during the live stream. Please don't stop the process there. We are always reachable. The Clean Up MidAm campaign is reachable. Moms Clean Air Force and Ecomadres are reachable. And as Katie pointed out, as Allie pointed out, as Dr. Blount pointed out, we must keep acting. Parting thoughts. I want to repeat what I said earlier. What happens here does not stay here. Anything we put into the air and into the water here ends up elsewhere and sometimes in another continent, affecting everybody's climate, for example. I want to also say that for me personally, once a mother, always a mother. I have 3 adult daughters, and becoming a mother turned me into an individual who feels the need to protect anybody who cannot speak up for themselves. And Moms Clean Air Force and Ecomadres, we do that. We want to be your voice if you don't know where to begin. Since the Iowa Utilities Board, since there's still a process to figure out how are we going to retire coal plants, are we going to go to solar or wind and or add gas to the mix, let me just say, gas is not the solution. If we use gas, we're kicking the can down the road. Ohio considers gas energy as a clean source of energy, but we at Moms Clean Air Force can give you all the references that you need to have to understand that gas is not a clean solution. It is a fossil fuel. Methane, which is part of natural gas, is 80 times more potent a greenhouse gas than CO2. Gas is not the solution. The funding is there for sustainable energy generation. Let's do it. Let's take care of our communities here and all around. Thanks for tuning in. Por favor, no dejen de comunicarse con nosotros en ecomadres.org. Pueden localizar a las personas que hablen español, por ejemplo, y les podemos hablar acerca de las oportunidades que existen hoy en día para obtener fondos para realizar sus propios monitoreos de aire en sus comunidades. Today, I want to say that Black and Brown communities, for the first time, have an opportunity to use their local organizations to apply to new EPA funding for local and regional air monitoring. And if you need more information about that, estoy hablando a los Latinos. I'm speaking to my Latino fellow members, and I'm speaking to indigenous communities. Reach out. Pay attention to what the EPA is offering, because you actually can do air monitoring in your community nowadays with funding that will allow the EPA to recognize red flags in your community and around the country. Muchísimas gracias. Thanks to all who have tuned in. Thanks to my colleagues who spoke here today, and take care of yourselves, take care of one another.